Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this critically important episode on why algaecides aren't scary. Now, what we want to talk about today is specific US EPA-approved algaecides and how they can be efficient, effective, and ecologically friendly tools in the fight against nuisance algae and toxic algae. So algaecides are specifically registered by the US EPA under a federal law called FIFRA. So under this law, any substance that's designed to prevent, destroy, repel, or mitigate algae, or pest in this case, needs to be registered as a pesticide or an algaecide is what we're going to talk about. So just to be absolutely clear, if you're going to use a product to control algae, it must be registered for that purpose by the US EPA under FIFRA, and the use sites you're going to use it in must also be present on that approved label. Now, this registration overall is a very important thing to understand, and I would argue a very good thing overall. Some people may say, oh no, algaecides are bad, or it's a registered pesticide, that's something we want to avoid and don't want to use, it can't be a good thing. And I could argue again, just the opposite. See, numerous independent studies go into getting this pesticide registration. They have to be reviewed by the EPA, submitted to the EPA, and the EPA uses these to build those label instructions and directions. So studies include anything from dissipation of the product to does it bioaccumulate through the food chain, does it negatively impact fish, invertebrates, wildlife associated with the water body, even bumblebees. And certainly a lot of studies on human health. Does that product impact any human uses of the water or humans directly following its use? So EPA again summarizes all these studies, all those data, literally hundreds of different studies, and sets the label guidelines, the label instructions to pose negligible risk to humans and the environment following its use. So most of these algaecides are very widely used in a lot of different types of water resources, and all our algaecides have no water use restrictions following application. So no issue with wildlife, with irrigation, no issue with humans recreating or swimming, or even for use in potable water systems. So overall, very negligible risk to humans and the environment when that label is specifically followed. So this process is very critical to being environmental stewards and using approved products for control of that nuisance or noxious algae you may be fighting. I'm actually way more skeptical on products that don't have that EPA registration, because likely they don't have near as many studies or any studies on the safety of those products. They don't have those studies that deal with the non-target species. They don't have the quality control that the EPA mandates on these products to keep a very tight look at the active ingredients. They don't have the studies that show whether or not it builds up in humans or causes any human health concerns or risk to your dogs or bumblebees. So I would be much more leery, much more concerned with using a product that doesn't have that approved EPA label and doesn't have all those studies behind it in that use site or in your backyard pond where your kids are swimming. The ones that the EPA said, hey, it's okay to be used there, it's okay to be used for that purpose, and there should be negligible risk when you follow these instructions that we've approved. Additionally, at CPRO, we've continued to advance these algaecides. So over the past decade, we've come out with many different new and advanced products and new chemistry. So if you're basing your perception on algaecides and herbicides from some historic products, well, those might not be able to be used anymore, certainly may not have been advanced like we are today with some of our products. So C-Clear, for example, it's the only 2-in-1 product, algaecide and water quality enhancer. We control the algae, we keep it from growing back, so we actually use less product through time. We don't need to go back there as often because the algae doesn't regrow as quickly, and we can be really selective and just take out the bad types of algae and actually leave the good types. Captain XTR, another example, something we've developed just recently, is very efficient, has good affinity, and great job getting control of those nuisance and toxic types of algae, and it can be twice as potent as many other products out there. So again, we're being more efficient with what we're using, and overall using less through time to get the job done. To get the same control, we need to put less product out there in the environment. PAC 27, yet another product. This breaks down into oxygen and water. It's NSF certified for drinking water and OMRI certified for organic use. So very, very safe for non-target species and people associated with the water body. So keep that in mind. These advanced algaecide formulations that we've been involved with only just recently have become very, very, very popular, very, very efficient to be used out there, and much much better than some of the older, out-of-date historic chemistries that have a much worse toxicity profile and often pose much more risks than these ones to the aquatic systems and human health. So in summary today, what we covered was registered algaecides and why they're a useful tool in the fight against toxic, noxious, and nuisance algae. That they have many studies behind them, many data, much quality control that goes into these products to get them approved for use, to get them labeled, to control algae, and get them approved for use out there in a variety of different use sites. So it's very important to read and follow all algaecide label directions because again, the EPA has mandated that for the specific use of these to control that pest. Very important to understand what algae it controls, at what concentration, and what use sites you can use it on, and also to show you that on none of our products we have any restrictions whatsoever on the water use after application. But overall, algaecides can be a highly studied tool, a very well-used tool, and regulatory approval of these products control these nuisance algae at these use sites. So in general, if you think algaecides are scary, you might want to take a closer look at it. Think again, and with that stamp of approval by the EPA, that approved label, you can actually use these quite efficiently and effectively and minimize any potential risk to the aquatic system. So thank you for tuning in to this critically important episode on why algaecides aren't really that scary and how they can be used efficiently and safely in your water resource to keep that water in good condition and good quality for you and your dog. So appreciate it, and as always, visit cpro.com if you have more questions.